Hello, everyone. So, this is going to be Jackson's birth story. So, Jake and I have been together 13 years next month, but when Jackson came around, we had been together 11 years, and we never really tried to have um, kids of our own. He raised Jolynn since she was like 2.5 when we got together, and I worked a lot, and so he took care of her when she was younger and stuff. And then we just never, timing wasn't right and stuff for another baby. I wanted one, but I told myself if I hit 35, I'm not having any kids anymore because Jolynn's almost graduated and everything. And 35, I was just like, we're not doing it. So, my dad passed away, and I was like sad that had happened and everything. Well, literally like the next month, my dad passed away in May, and then in June, I found out I was pregnant with Jackson, and it was kind of crazy because we'd been together so long and nothing had ever happened, and now at this time, like, I'm pregnant, which I really wanted to be, so that was kind of cool. And so I felt like it was my dad kind of like telling me not to be sad and just like focus on something better. And so I was thrown into that. And at 13 weeks, we did like just genetic testing, and I was able to find out that I was having a boy. And that was a crazy moment because I was at work and I got like a text message that the results for my genetic testing were in. And usually the doctors would call you, but because I had like it on my phone or something, it told me. And so I clicked on it, and it was me. I worked as a med tech. So it's like 8 a.m. I'm in the hallway getting medication ready. And my friend Ashley that I worked with came out of a room, and I was like, oh my gosh, Ashley, I can see what I'm having. I said, but I physically can't push the button. Because it said, do you want to find out what you're having? And I put yes. And then it's like, you have to watch this little minute video. And it was right there. Like, it was ready for me to see, but I was so nervous because I wanted a boy so bad. I have a daughter. I wanted a son, and I was so, so nervous. And plus Jake wanted a boy, right? Jake's the last of his name. And so having a boy is a big deal. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I can't push this button. And so Ashley's like, do you want me to watch it and tell you what it is? And I said, no, but can you just stand here and watch it with me? And she's like, yeah. So we're at my little med cart, and we're like watching this video, and I'm crying already because I'm just emotional being pregnant and stuff. So like I was crying already. And so it tells you all about the joys of like motherhood and like happiness of children and things like that. And then it says the results are in, and it has all these like whooshy like things fluttering around, and it's like you're having, and then it's like ... and then I'm like can't breathe, and then it's like a boy, and Ashley screamed in the hallway. I started like crying so hard, and it makes me emotional now because it was just a great moment, like, finally I got a boy, like it's perfect. And so I called my mom crying, and she was like too worried about what was happening to hear what I was saying. And so she thought something bad was happening, and I told her I was having a boy, and she was excited, but like the happiness wasn't there because, as a mom, your daughter calls you pregnant and she's bawling, and you worry about something bad happening. And so anyway, she's like, you have to call Jake. And so I called Jake. He's sleeping, and I'd like tell him quickly or whatever, and I'm like, okay, go back to bed. And then, I continued on with my day. But my pregnancy with Jackson was cool. Like, I got pregnant at 34, so I was almost 35. And his was a little harder than Jolynn's. Like, I got gestational diabetes with him. I'm more overweight than I was with Jolynn, so I got gestational diabetes with him, so I had to check my blood pressures my blood sugars twice a day. And I got COVID at 20 weeks pregnant. I had worked through the whole COVID pandemic without getting sick, working around all of these elderly people and stuff, and I never got sick. The people had it, and I was in and out of their rooms, but I never got sick. And then when I got pregnant, probably because your immune system goes down, I got COVID, and that was rough on me because I, like, the first 5 days, I think I just laid on the couch and I didn't eat anything. And Jake would try to like force feed me soup because he was like, you have to eat, but I just didn't feel like it. And so for like 5 days, I didn't really eat much, but like a bite or two of soup a day because I was forced to. And I just laid on the couch, and like he'd make me go to bed. And so I'd go to bed, and then in the morning I'd come out onto the couch, and like I would take showers, but then before I could even dry off, I'd have to go lay down because just standing in the shower took all my energy. I had like no energy. So for 2 weeks, that's what the problem was. I just had no energy. I couldn't do anything. I just laid on the couch, slept all the time. I went to the hospital twice. The first time was when I first found out I was pregnant. My mom and my doctor both said I should go get checked out, and I had, like, the baby was fine, but my oxygen levels were low, so they sent me home with oxygen to where when my numbers got below 94, yeah, if my oxygen got below 94, I was supposed to put the oxygen on. And I went again because I was having like chest pains, but it was just heartburn. So they gave me some Tums and like set me on my way. But I didn't know that that's what it was. There were so many things happening. And anyway, so it took me 3 weeks to recover. The first 2 weeks I had no energy. The last week I was starting to get my energy back, but I would lose it quickly if I was like trying to do anything outside of just laying down. If I tried to do laundry, I could like start laundry, but that would be all I could do for the day. So I was like out of work for 3 weeks. And then I got better from that. So, and then that's around the time that Jaxon started moving around and I could start feeling him. But I was sleeping a lot, so I wasn't really like, I couldn't really enjoy it. And it was sad because I've been waiting so long for him to start moving and everything. And then when he did, when he finally started moving, I was sleeping a lot and didn't feel good. But anyway, I went back to work afterwards, and I worked and had doctor's appointments. They watched me pretty close because of COVID. I guess it does something to your placenta. And so I got like more ultrasound than normal, which was cool because I got to see him all the time. And, but yeah, so, I went through that, and then I worked. I was telling my boss that it was getting hard for me to be a med tech by myself. Like, they were trying to implement at work where there was multiple med techs because there was just one, and we had like 3 floors, and so they were trying to make it to where there was like 2 med techs and you would split it, but it didn't get implemented when I was there. And so I was telling her it was getting hard for me towards like my 7 months to like be running up and down stairs and like helping get people off the floor if they had fallen, and I was already like being slower, so like any emergency that happened would put me way behind in my med pass. And so I was telling her that I needed help on the med carts and stuff, and she wasn't really helping figure out a solution. And so I was letting her know that I was probably going to take the last week or the last month of my pregnancy off just to like get my house ready and stuff, and she wasn't training anybody, so it was just kind of stressful towards the end. And then I went to the doctors. So I went to the doctors on like a Wednesday, and they told me that my blood pressures were kind of high, for like higher than they were normally. And so they told me that I needed to watch my blood pressures over the weekend and to call them if they had gotten high. And so I watched them over the weekend, and they did progressively start getting higher. So on Monday, I called them and was like, I should make an appointment, or told them what my blood pressures were, and they wanted me to come in after work. So then I went in after work, and they took my blood pressure, and it was like 170 over 90 or something like that, which is really high. And so they said that I had to go, I told them like I had just gotten off work, so let me relax for a few minutes and see if it goes down. And so they had me call Jake. I called Jake to have him bring my blood pressure cuff just to see how accurate mine was compared to theirs. And then while he was there was supposed to be this huge snowstorm coming, because this was January 3rd. So there was supposed to be like a huge snowstorm coming, so they were letting schools out an hour early. And so he had to leave to go pick up Jolene. So then he left was getting Jolyn. While he was gone, they told me that I had to go to the birthing center, but that I couldn't drive myself because my blood pressures were so high that they thought I could have a seizure at any moment. And so they were like, you can't drive. From where my doctor was to where the hospital is like a block away. And they wouldn't let me drive there. And I was kind of frustrated because it's like I had worked all day. I had driven there. So it's like, I'm fine. But she was like, just for safety reasons, we can't have you driving. And so I was like, okay. So I called Jake back and he had to come and get me. We left my car there. He took me to the birthing center. Because of the COVID pandemic, they wouldn't let Jolyn in because she wasn't 18. So he had to leave me there and take her home. And they put me on like magnesium. And at that point, my doctor was like, this baby's coming. Like, you're not going full term. So I was 34 weeks in like 5 days. And they were like, he has to come out because it's causing you problems and your life is at risk. So she was like, we're going to have to get him out. But they couldn't deliver him where I live because their hospital doesn't have the facility for that. Like, there's no NICU or anything. And so she was like, we're going to send you to Medford, which is like an hour and a half away. And so they were trying to figure out how to get me there. They were going to fly me or they were going to take me in an ambulance. But with the weather, there was already snow coming down and everything. So they were like nervous about what they were going to do, how they were going to get me there. So I had been like talking to Jolyn. She had to like pack me a bag, and I was calling Jake's sister to come over and like put the playpen together. I literally had like nothing together because I thought that I had time. And so it was just kind of like, this is happening now. I wasn't ready. And so they decided they were going to fly me. So it was kind of cool. I got to ride in an ambulance to the airport. They loaded me onto this little tiny airplane, and then the airplane flew me to Medford. They put me in an ambulance to ride to the hospital. And then when I got to the hospital, when I was leaving Klamath Falls, Jacob I texted him and said, okay, they're taking me to Medford. Well, he started driving in this huge snowstorm. It was like whiteouts. Like, he sent me pictures of the drive and like you couldn't see anything. Like, I don't know. And he was, in a form of panic because, like, I'm getting flown in an airplane and, they're going to have to take the baby out. And this is Jake's first experience with like pregnancy and like babies and stuff. And so he was like worried and everything. But anyway, he made it there safely. I made it there safely. So I got to the hospital and they started to induce me and everything. And I wish they would have told me. I mean, I guess you never know how fast things are going to happen, or slow, but I wish they would have said, like, I thought they were like, we were going to get there and like take him out, like have a C-section or something, but they induced me, which was nice, but it took like 2 days. So like I could have had Jake drive up, instead of Monday night at 10 o'clock in a snowstorm, he could have driven up like Tuesday daytime when the snow had stopped, or whatever. But I guess you just never know what's going to happen. So they started inducing me and everything was pretty smooth. At one point, like, Jaxon kept moving around, so they kept losing his heartbeat on the monitor. And so they were trying like different monitors to monitor him. And they were putting this like really tight, I forget, like a garter belt or something. I forget what it's called. But they were putting this like belt on, and I was leaned back, like not laying flat, but like leaned back. And so it was really, really tight. And she put it on, and then she was like, okay, we're going to adjust the monitor. And so she opened it, and I told her that I felt like I was going to pass out, and I did. I passed out. And Jake said that, like, I don't know how long I was out. Nobody talked to me about it after, like, when I came back. Nobody, like, said anything. So I don't know how long I was out for. But Jake said I passed out. He was on the left side of me. They tried to wake me up, and I didn't wake up. So they pushed the like emergency button, and like all of these people came in and like physically moved Jake from the left side of me to the right side of me. And they started like watching monitors. They started like trying to wake me up, and nothing was working. And they started talking about like emergency C-sections and all of these things, and was like scaring Jake having to hear all of this stuff. And then I woke up and I woke up and there was like a lot of people in the room, but then they all just like left and nobody said anything to me. So Jake said it probably was like under a minute that all of this happened, but it felt like it was forever, and he thought that I was like dying. And so after that, he like wouldn't leave my side. Like he was hungry and I was like, go get food. And he was like, no, what if you pass out? And I was like, then they'll come and bring, like, I'm hooked up to monitors. They're in here because of being on magnesium. They were like constantly in the room. They had to like check my legs every hour. And like, I had a catheter because when you're on magnesium, they don't want you walking around and stuff. And so like, I was like, if I pass out, someone will know, like, you know. And so he calmed down a little bit and was able to like eat and take a shower and stuff. And so that was Monday night. And then Tuesday all day, the induction process was happening. Wednesday, January 5th, I was 35 weeks pregnant, and everything was going along smoothly. I got an epidural because I was starting to have contractions and everything. And the lady, you know how they come in and like check you to see how you're doing. And I had been checked a couple times and he wasn't ready yet. And then the last time she checked me and she was like, oh, you're not ready yet. And then she like stepped to the side and I literally felt like he was coming out. Like I was like, no, he's coming right now. And I like moved down to the end of the table and she was like, don't push, don't push. And they had to like run and go get the doctor. And he comes like running in, and I'm at the end of the table and he comes running in on his little, he gets on his stool and he sits down and he's like, all right, he's like, give me a push. And I like pushed, you know, like pushed. And then they're like, open your eyes. And there he was. It was like a push. That's all it took. Just one. He was ready. He was right there. And so he came out and they put him like on my stomach so I couldn't really see him. And they were like, you know, wiping him off and stuff like that. And then they moved him to like my chest, but he was like under my chin, so I still couldn't really see him. And there was a nurse that was like rubbing his back and he was crying, but she just she kept telling him not to do that. She was like, don't do that, don't do that. And I don't know what she's talking about, but I guess he was grunting. So like their lungs, when they breathe out, like when they grunt, their lungs aren't opening back up. And so I guess that's what was happening. So he was only on me for a few seconds. And then she's like, we have to put him on the table. And so they did. And Jake was like watching everything. And I was like, take pictures. But he was too like worried or in the moment, I guess. And so one of the nurses was like, I'll take some pictures. And so Jaxon was born at like 3:45, January 5th. He was 4 pounds, 13 ounces, and I believe like 18 inches long. He was just a little tiny thing, and his lungs weren't working properly. So they had to immediately put him on a CPAP machine and take him to the NICU. And so Jake went with them, and he was gone like 45 minutes. And he came back, and I had been cleaned up and everything. And I was able to go and see him for the first time, like really see him. But he was, you know, little tubes. He had tubes everywhere and this thing on his face. And like, he's so tiny. He was so little. And so after he came and we were all safe, Jake came home because we had been away from home and Jolyn was here with Jake's sister and stuff. And so he went home that night, Wednesday night, and I was there until Saturday. And then they told me that they were discharging me, but Jaxon wasn't ready to come. And that was like the hardest thing because like it's an hour and a half away. It's not like I can just like hang out there all day and then, you know, go home, which I did. Like we came home and like I got whatever stuff needed to be finished getting ready and everything. And then it was like, I wanted to go every day, but it turned out that I would go like every other day and I'd spend a couple hours there and have like skin to skin with him and everything. And then I'd come home. So Saturday I went. Monday, me and Jake had to go out of town because he was doing like a hiring process for a company. And we needed to go. It was like 2 hours away, 2.5 hours away, to do this like test or something. And so we went and did that, but we drove and saw Jaxon on the way. And then we stayed the night at a hotel in Red Bluff or wherever we were. And then on the way back, we stopped and saw Jaxon. And then we came home And so that was like Tuesday, Wednesday. So then on Friday, they called me and said that he was able to move to the special care nursery and you're able to stay there. So like in the NICU, you can't stay with them. But when they go to the special care nursery, there's a room so you can stay in this room. And so that Friday, which would have been like the 7th, I guess. No. He was born on the 5th. He was in the NICU for like a week. So yeah, I don't know the date, but he moved to the special care nursery. And so I went up there with my bags and I stayed up there with him for 4 straight weeks. We were up in the special care nursery for 4 weeks and he was on oxygen and they couldn't figure out like why his lungs weren't working. They did all these x-rays and they always looked the same, like they weren't getting better. He started to physically get better, like he didn't need as much oxygen but he still needed the CPAP. So I learned that like a CPAP machine forces your lungs to open. It like puts pressure in your lungs with oxygen. And so like sometimes he could go on like regular oxygen without the CPAP machine, but then if his oxygen was dropping or like he couldn't maintain it, they'd put him on the CPAP machine again. So it was just like back and forth. We were doing that. So he always had all this stuff on his face. He had a feeding tube because he was really little and he wasn't like breastfeeding and I wasn't producing enough because he was early, I guess. And I was trying to pump, but that's like really hard to do. I wasn't making enough, so it was like discouraging. And so I'd give them what I'd make, but then it wasn't enough, so they'd have to like give him formula. But he had a feeding tube. And so they were feeding him through that. So when I was staying with him, like when they would do that, I just held him all the time. It's hard with the CPAP machine because you have to be really careful. Like when he moves around and everything, someone has to come and help you pick him up and hold him. And then you have to call them when you're ready to put him down just to make sure that like the mask stays on his face and stuff. But eventually he was able just to go on straight oxygen and then I could pick him up and do whatever I wanted with him. He just had to be attached to oxygen. So we were there for 4 weeks. And then like February 7th, he was able to come home. Jake had asked me to come home for that weekend because I had been gone for like 4 straight weeks. And he's like, can you just come home for like a weekend? He had come up and seen me like the first weekend I was up there. He came up and spent a night at a hotel with me. And then a couple friends of mine, Amber and Greg and Jake, came up and had dinner with me one night. But I had like my birthday in there. And so it was just kind of a weird thing. Like, you know, you feel so isolated and like it's hard to see this baby that can't do anything for themselves, like having all these problems and they're like constantly like poking and prodding and like coming in to feed him. The nurses were really nice because like in the nighttime, if he was kind of crying, they'd come in and they'd say, do you want us to feed him or do you want to feed him? And sometimes like I'd be so tired and I'd be like, can you feed him? And they were like, yeah, of course, you know, and they would like sit with him and feed him and let me sleep. And other times, you know, like, cause they're busy. There was like, when I was up in there in the special care nursery, they had 2 babies that were on a CPAP machine. And so they have to be monitored like more closely. And the nurse that I had was taking care of both of us. So, you know, sometimes that baby would need more than Jaxon would or whatever. And so I'm like, you just tell me if you don't have time, you know, I'll get up and do it. I mean, I have to do it. So, you know, but it was like, they were super nice and like, it was a really great experience. And then we finally got to come home, like I said, February 7th. And then he's just been great. He's like a year and a half now and he is, you know, doing really well. He's not like delayed or anything. He started walking like a week before he turned 1, which I guess when you have a preemie, they look at like how old they would be gestationally and how old they actually are. And so like when he started walking, it was like a week before he turned like 11 months or something, 10 months or whatever. And so he isn't like delayed and he's super cute. He's napping right now. I can't make these videos when he's awake because he wants to like be all up in them and everything. But yeah, he's just super cute and like it's been so nice having him. And But yeah, anyway, that's the story of how he came into the world. He was, I feel like, a gift from my dad to make it to where I wasn't so sad at the loss of my dad. And he kind of has some aspects of my dad, because my dad was like really hyper and never relaxed, and Jaxon definitely is like a very happy baby. My dad was always very happy, and he's a very happy child, but he's like he's just talking all the time, which I talk all the time, but he's just cute. He's cute, cute, cute. And so I'm sure one of these times you'll see him in a video. But yeah, anyway, so that's the story of little Jaxon. I hope you guys have a great day.